On the first night, there was a fellow by the name of Hector Cafferata who received the Medal of Honor. But Hector and I were good friends. We met out in California. Hector had been down over the hill on the bench a little earlier, and they got hit first. And he got chased out of his location. And he had his feet in his sleeping bag because it was 40 below zero. So he ran up the hill in his socket feet, climbed in the trench with me. We had a little slit trench up there that I was in. And he and
Hi, this is Bruce Lindsay, working with Elizabeth Gallo on our continuing project to document the stories of veterans. Today, we are with Korean War veteran Lou Mercadante. Lou served with the Marine Corps during the Chosin Reservoir campaign in Korea. He was a member of Fox Company, 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, who were charged with holding the critical location called Toktong Pass. The company of 250 Marines was attacked by several thousand Chinese troops in severe conditions with temperatures reaching 40 degrees below zero. Lou is one of the few surviving members of Fox 27.
I'm Lou Mercadante. I joined the Marine Corps Reserve in 1949 while I was a senior in high school. In 1950, the Korean War broke out, and our President Truman at the time activated the reserves, and we left Pittsburgh on September 9th, 1950, and went out to California. And Camp Pendleton was lodged in 10 Camp 2, where we did advanced infantry training for 30 days. And then we shipped out of San Diego, went over to Kobe, Japan, received some foul weather gear, and within a couple of weeks, we went in North Korea at Wonsan. Started north and advanced very quickly, as there wasn't much resistance. And I ended up joining Fox Company at Hagaro, probably second week in November. We were there for a couple of weeks till Thanksgiving Day. We had dinner Thanksgiving. He brought a hot meal up to us. And they said we were going to leave there and go up to defend this mountain pass on Fox, this Toktong Pass. So we were loaded on vehicles, went about 5 miles up on the mountain, got out of the vehicles. Our company commander dispersed all of us in different places, clear up to the top of the hill. I was in the 3rd platoon, so I ended up clear at the top of the hill at the extreme perimeter on the hill. And my friend Jim Hostetler was in the 2nd platoon, I was in the 3rd platoon. And we got to be very good friends there because he came up and spent a night with me when I was all by myself up there. Everybody else, we'd lost so many guys, we were pretty thin. So I was kind of nervous about being there by myself. So I asked my lieutenant if I could have someone come up, and he said, yeah, I'll bring someone up. So he brought Jim up. And we spent, I think, just the one night, the 3rd night on the hill together. But it was quite a deal. The first night, just all of a sudden, there was Chinese every place. Just almost overrun us, just went clear through us. But by daybreak, they all left. And what they do, just as it gets dark, they shoot flares up in the air, blow bugles. I guess that's how they send their commands to their troops. And they just would come, hordes of troops, just one after another. On the first night, there was a fellow by the name of Hector Cafferata who received the Medal of Honor. But Hector and I were good friends. We met out in California. Hector had been down over the hill on the bench a little earlier, and they got hit first. And he got chased out of his location. and he had his feet in his sleeping bag because it was 40 below zero. So he ran up the hill in his socket feet, climbed in the trench with me. We had a little slit trench up there that I was in. And he and his buddy, Kenny Benson, climbed in with me. Well, Hector won a Medal of Honor for a battle that night, the first night. After that, I didn't see Hector anymore because he went down to get his shoes, and he got shot 3 times by a sniper. And his one arm was partially paralyzed, and I didn't see him until we had our first reunion at Quantico years later. But then the second night was just almost as bad as the first night with being overrun. And every night it got a little less. We kind of whipped them down a little bit. They weren't as frisky the third and fourth nights. And the fifth night, we didn't see anybody. And the fifth day is when Colonel Davis and his column of men come through our position. They had walked down from up by the Yellow River over the mountains to Fox Company. I don't know how they ever found us, but they did. They got lost a couple of times, but so when Colonel Davis came in, he came right by my position because I seen him coming, and I said to the lieutenant, "Here they come." So they came right by, and they walked down over the hill down to the command post where Captain Barber was. I stayed in my position. Well, I was there for a couple of hours, and nobody came back. And I thought, well, this is strange. I wonder what we're doing. So I walked down over the hill, and they were all gone. The whole company was gone. They must have forgot I was up there. So I joined. There was a whole stream of vehicles coming down, still coming down through the pass that we held. So if we would have lost that pass, probably 7,000 Marines would have been trapped. They would have never got out. So I joined in with them, ended up down in Hagaroo, and I was frostbitten pretty bad, so I went over to the medical tent, and they told me to get on a plane and fly out of there. So I got on the last plane out of Hagaroo, ended up in Japan. Was there till that was probably the first week of December, and I was there until April 1st, 1951. Came back to the States, came home, and then I was stationed at Yorktown Naval Mine Depot. I stayed there until I got out, 52. So that was my extended time in the Marine Corps. It was a great time. I met some nice people there. I found out that once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine. And everybody respects the Marine Corps. And I've always said if I was ever going to go into combat, I would never want to be with any outfit but a Marine Corps outfit, because the discipline is unbelievable. I had no experience whatsoever, no boot camp, no training. Sent to Korea with really not much, 30 days training at Camp Pendleton. And guess what? I got assigned a Browning automatic rifle. You give it to the smallest guy in the outfit. Well, the first day in battle, it worked. Second day, it wouldn't work, froze up. So then I picked up an M1 and used it until it froze up, and I got a carbine and used it. So the weather was probably one of our worst enemies. Just unbelievable. It was so cold, I don't know how we survived. But we did. And I always say I'm glad I was a Marine, because I don't think we'd have made it if I wouldn't have been a Marine. So those were my days in Korea. They were short, but probably about 2 months in Korea, but that was about it.
So you mentioned Hector Cafferata.
Yes.
Who was did you know Captain Barber at all? Or did you
Oh, yes.
see him during the conflict? What was his role?
Well, Captain Barber came up every day. Even when he was wounded, they brought him around. He visited us every day.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he gave us orders that once it got dark, no one was allowed to move. Anything that moved shoot it. It has to be an enemy. So that's how we stayed put. You stayed where you were, no matter what. Because the worst thing you could do was get up and run, and you wouldn't have made it, because one of our own men would have shot you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how, I think, how we survived. Because we were told to stay in our position, not to move. So we did that every night. But the Chinese never came during the day, just came at night, as soon as it got dark.
And who was your platoon commander?
It was Robert McCarthy. He just died a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I used to call him and talk to him all the time. But I never asked him why they left me on the hill. Well, I think it was just an oversight. But I walked down off the hill and jumped in with the other guys. And
So you were the last person off of Fox
I
Hill?
was the last guy off of Fox Hill.
Wow. That's something.
And I was the furthest guy out on the top the whole time. Well, the first night there was probably a machine gunner, was an Indian by the name of McAfee, and I forget the other guy. There was two of them. They were wounded pretty bad. We carried them down off the hill after the first night. But after that, there was no one beyond me.
So you were in the foxhole by yourself?
Me and Lieutenant McCarthy.
He was on the front line?
Yeah, he was in a little compound right at the end of the trench, and I was there. That's all there was. And there was two Gonzalez brothers from Texas,
Mm-hmm.
were about 20 yards from us. Other than that, there was no one else there. After the first night, that was about it. We were pretty much on the far perimeter by ourselves.
Do you remember any of the squad leaders or platoon sergeants?
No, I wasn't there long enough to really meet any of them. Being I was a replacement, I didn't know any of the regulars that were there.
Right.
And there was no time to really socialize.
Yeah.
So I really did. I met a lot of them when we got back. I met a lot of them at the reunions.
Mm-hmm.
But when we were there, I didn't really know them.
You mentioned that you spent some time with Jim Hostetler. Was that before he was wounded or after?
Well, I think Jim got wounded probably the first night. So he was wounded. There was almost everybody was wounded somewhere or another. I had first night I got a real bad concussion from a grenade. But you couldn't leave. Everybody had to stay in their position. We had almost everybody either was shot or had frostbite or something. Everybody had a problem. It was I don't think there was a half dozen guys that got off the hill without any problem.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of them that were shot that were walking around. They had bullet wounds, shrapnel wounds, different things. We were so short of men, there was no supply, so we had to stay.
Did you get resupplied with food and ammunition, and how did that happen?
They supplied us with ammunition. They flew over with flying boxcars and dropped it. We had to run out and get it. We made a big circle with the flags, made a drop zone for the second dropping, so they knew where to drop it. But the food, I didn't have any food for 5 days. I used to search the pockets of people, deceased people looking for food. Found a little piece of chocolate or something, and I had no food at all. They said they dropped us food, but I don't ever recall getting any food at all.
Do you remember if you were in? Did you get artillery support or air support?
We had artillery support, and you could hear them coming. They'd fly right over top of us, the 105s, and hit the hill across from us. That's where all the Chinese were. But I was told that we could not receive any information, but they didn't know when they were calling out the directions as to where the shells were going. We couldn't tell whether they could hear us. Evidently, our radios worked going out, but not coming in, so we didn't know, had no communication. But those they would fire that artillery right over top of us. You could hear them going right over top of our head and hit on the hill right next to us. And it dropped stuff that was aerial exploding, hot stuff, white phosphorus, aerial burst. They'd shoot that stuff. But, I was 19. I didn't know much about any of that stuff. I wasn't well schooled on military stuff. So I was kind of a rookie. But it was quite an experience.
So how would you say that experience and your time in the Marine Corps affected the rest of your life? What are some of the things you got out of that?
Well, it made me appreciate being home. And I couldn't wait to get out of Ambridge, where I was born and raised. And I thought, man, I can't wait to get out of this place. And I was so glad to get back home. So it makes you appreciate life a lot better. And really, like I said, you really make some lifelong friends. It was, I never regret 1 minute, even though it was a crazy way that I got involved. It was a interesting part of my life, and it changed my life because it made me more determined to get through life without worrying about what was going to happen tomorrow. There's nothing could ever get any worse than what we had there. Every day was a plus. And I've always said that. People say, have a good day. I tell them, every day is a good day. Some are better than others. So I enjoyed my time in the Marine Corps, and I've enjoyed meeting a lot of Marines since then, and enjoy the respect that people have for me being a veteran. I've had a lot of good encounters with people.
Why did you choose the Marine Corps?
Well, we had an assembly at the high school, and they had every branch of the service there. Well, I was always kind of like the Marine Corps, so I decided I might as well go ahead and join. So just the spur of the moment thing from an assembly at the high school. That's how I got involved with the Marine Corps.
So where did you grow up again?
Ambridge.
Okay. Do you have a big family, or?
Yeah, there was 5 of us at home, brothers and sisters.
Any of them serve, or were you the only one?
My youngest brother served in Vietnam with the Army, but that was the only ones that went into service.
When you came back, you were talking about going into business and education. You want to go
Yeah, I came back. I went back to my old job, and I just decided I couldn't do that. I couldn't handle the cold weather. I drove a milk truck, retail delivery of milk to residences. In fact, right out here where I live, that's where my route was. And my girl that ended up being my wife just was one of my customers. But we were friends in high school. I come home from Korea, we got bonded pretty well. Ended up getting married after I got out of school. But I worked a year, and then I went to school for 2 years. And started to work in industry and didn't like it. Ended up in public accounting. Was there for 4 years and left there and started my own business and had it for 50 years, sold it. Worked with the guy that bought it for 11 years after I sold it. And I'm still very close with them. They still retain my name, Mercadante Company. So I started that business in 1960.
Must have had a good reputation.
So I asked him one day, why don't you change the name of the business? He said, why should I do that? He said, it has such a good reputation, well known. He said, I have no reason to change it. So I'm kind of proud of that.
That's great.
But I've had a lot of things. My wife and I were active in the church, and I was active in the Boy Scouts. And, we've had a very good life. I can't complain. The Lord's been good to me. I've had good health. I'm 94 years old. I still get around. I have a big garden every year. And my sons come out. They have a garden. They plant their garden up with me. And we stay together. We have a good family relationship.
That's great. You want to talk a little bit about what you did with the Scouts and with the youth group in the church?
Well, the youth group, we used to take them on camping trips. We'd go away probably every other weekend in the summer, go to a little lake out in Ohio, set up camp, and we'd spend the weekend, have a church service every Sunday morning. We had a fellow that was like a lay preacher. He would get down by the lake and would meet down there and have a church service. And it was a good, that night we'd cook stuff on a fire and have s'mores and different things. And it meant a lot to the young kids. And then with the Boy Scouts, I was active with our troop. And we would go up to Canada on canoe trips. I'd go with them. And we just stayed pretty active. We had a nice group of men involved with the Scouts, probably about 8 or 10 fathers that worked with us all the time. And we had a big troop, and we had a lot of fun. So. And then I did a lot of hunting and fishing, and I got a lot of friends, and I had a hunting camp, and I always had people come up there, and I used to take the Scouts up there, and we'd camp up there for over a weekend, a couple times a year. It just had a very good, enjoyable life.
So can you think of things specifically that you learned in the Marine Corps that you applied to the rest of your life? Or?
Well, I think discipline is the biggest thing. And never let anything beat you down. There's nothing that you can't conquer. And anything that bothers you today, when the sun rises tomorrow, it probably doesn't even make any difference anymore because that problem's gone away and another one has arrived. So I just never worried about what was going to happen tomorrow. I figured tomorrow would take care of itself. And my wife used to kid me, say, "You don't worry about anything." I said, "No, I don't. What's the sense in worrying? Worry doesn't solve any problems." So maybe we worry a little bit, but we don't say anything about it.
Would you have any advice for younger people, the younger generation?
Well, I'm prejudiced for the Marine Corps. I love the Marines. Sometimes it's probably not a good choice unless, you get in the Marines, you have to understand every Marine is a grunt. Everyone is set up to be infantry. You might end up doing other things, but if you're not ready to do some of those tough things that the infantry does, then you better change your mind. But because the Marine Corps is tough and they're disciplined, when they tell you to do something, you better do it. And it teaches you through life that discipline is very important and respect is very important. And since I've been out of the Marine Corps, I find there's a lot of respect because I have many, many people come up to me, thank me for my service. And people that I never even know who they are come up to me. So it's been a good experience. And I'm not sorry one day for how my life was going.
You mentioned that you work with a church youth group, and is your faith part of your life that's important to you, or?
Oh, yeah. I've always gone to church, constantly. I never miss a Sunday. I went even when I was in the Marine Corps. If there was a service, I went. I think faith is a big part of life. If you don't have a church life and church family, you're missing out on a lot. So I've always been very active in that. Served on church council and different things.
So besides the Boy Scouts and the church, were there any other activities you were involved in?
No, other than, going on hunting trips, I'd go out west with different groups of guys, and I ended up with one group that really, they were clients of mine. We're still friends.
Mm-hmm.
We went out there probably 15 different trips hunting elk and mule deer and antelope. Had a lot of fun, a lot of good friends, and it just, you just have to be sociable and get out and meet people, and and do those things. And be active in the community and in your church. That's the best advice you give anybody. You got to be active. You have to be part of the group. Well, I tell you, in North Korea, the Army units that were there, their officers said everybody's on their own. We're in trouble. You're on your own. The Marine Corps, we stayed together.
Yep.
So I've always said if I was ever had to go into combat, it's only one outfit I would want to be with.
Yep.
And they're disciplined enough that, you learn to pay attention.
Yeah. Yep. It's part of the mentality. And like I said, you're 94, and I know kids that are 24, and they think the same way. They think the same way as I do. I'm 62. They're 24. You're 94.
Right. Well, I've got an American flag flying out in front of my house. And it's funny because a lot of people stop here. It's just the borough building. The borough building's down the road. I tell them, no, you stopped about a half a mile too quick. But I've always flown the flag out front.
Yep.
And when that flag wears out, I have another new flag right downstairs ready to put on there. And I've got to get another flagpole set up because I want to put my Marine Corps flag out there.
Nice. Nice.
And I'm proud of that, being a Marine.
Yep.